My name is Scott Carlson, and actually, let me start sharing my screen to keep myself on track here. And there we go. Great. And I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Jarvis Tren, and we both work at Suffolk University in different capacities. I am a senior assistant director of enrollment at Suffolk, and Jarvis is the director of our McNair Scholars Program. And he can certainly answer questions about the McNair Scholars Program if you're like, what is that? So definitely feel free to ask in the chat. So quickly, we have a lot of information, so I want to jump right into it. Here's sort of what we'll be going over. Ultimately, our goal here is to convey, as I go back, how to make a good first impression in all of its forms. So whether that is in person, whether it's through your resume, digitally, all of these different ways that people perceive you, it's important to make sure that you're taking all the steps that you can to put yourself in the best light. The key here is that you have these skills, this knowledge, these values, and the key is to let people know what you're all about. So we're going to talk about part of a good first impression is doing well in your first semester or ultimately in school or in any educational endeavor. So we'll talk about how to leverage student involvement opportunities, resume and cover letter, always important. And then ultimately branding yourself as well, which I was wildly uncomfortable with prior to doing my MBA. And now that I sort of get how the game is played, for lack of a better term, I want to help people play that game as best that they can, ultimately. So, study tips. Nobody really told me how to study. And this is also where students can really get backed up if you don't have a process for how to actually study. So some tips that I use: set the scene. Don't be in the subway, trying to cram in a chapter. Certainly, if you have to, do what you have to do. But ideally, you're going to be in a quiet environment where you're comfortable, where you feel safe. And that can be a library, that can be your university or high school, different offices, but ultimately try to find yourself a nice quiet space where you can actually think. And when you're in class, handwrite your notes. This is my psychology undergrad degree coming through, but they really stick in your brain a lot better when you write with a different, ultimately when you use a motor skill. So it uses different pathways in your brain. So just the act of writing actually helps get that information into your brain. So as the professor or the teacher is lecturing, you don't want to write down word for word. You're trying to pull out the essence of what the concept is so that when you go back, when you're studying, when you're reviewing, you are already exposed to it and you have an idea about what the kernel of that concept is, and then you can build upon that. Explaining in your own words is a great way to do this. Use your friends, use your professors, use anyone around, and just try to explain what you're learning about in your own words. This also uses a different part of the brain, helps it really embed in there. Create outlines. This is how you structure your information so that you make sure you're hitting everything that the professor, that the teacher is looking for. So pulling from those key concepts that you wrote down in your notes and organizing them in a way that makes sense to you. My fiance is an artist. Their notes include arrows and different colored pens and all sorts of different doodles and things like that. That's fine. Your notes are for you. And whatever works for you and helps you remember, use that. And then self-test. My favorite way: index cards. You can use them alone, flashcards. I think most of us have done them. You put the answer on the back, the question on the front, and you just go through. Also, reverse them. Reverse the concept so that you are thinking about it both ways. Part of studying and making a good impression is showing up on time, and really making sure that nothing is falling through the cracks. So college and high school life in general is pretty chaotic. So for me, my process is every morning when I wake up, I make a list of what I have to do on the left-hand side of my little notepad. And then on the right-hand side, I write down the time and who I'm meeting with of all my meetings for the day so that I'm then able to figure out blocks of time that I have to when I was doing my MBA, do my homework or do specific functions that my job requires. So budgeting time, and I think looking a week ahead, using your syllabus as a guide, certainly right as you get your syllabus, I think using one calendar, which is tough. I use two calendars. I have my Outlook calendar and then I have my personal one. So I understand it might be tough. I also have a written one on the fridge. So managing all of this, it takes labor. But ultimately it takes a weight off your shoulders so that you are not so stressed and feel like you have a million things going on. You have your list, you got your schedule, and from there you're able to make decisions on how to use your time. So you certainly want to establish priorities as things come in. um, Sometimes it's not first come first serve when it comes to your tasks. Some are more important, some are weighted higher in certain classes and things like that. So you want to keep that in mind as you're ranking. And that's another thing I do with my list. Once I have everything out, I will rank it based on how important they are. Ultimately, be honest with yourself too. Don't overextend yourself. Part of not overextending yourself is setting up a schedule and budgeting your time. Part of budgeting your time, budget personal time, time to hang out with your friends so that you already know, hey, I can't 6 to 8 on Tuesday. I can't. That's when I study. As opposed to, oh, I guess I could go out instead of studying. It's already on the calendar. It's already in your mind. So try to be somewhat regimented about that. Not too regimented, certainly. Another piece that's important to pay attention to when it comes to time management is setting goals. And this is true for life in general, for school, anything ultimately. So this is Smart Framework. You Google it, you'll get a ton of guides on it that are probably better than this one slide. So certainly this is just the first exposure to it. Um, but these are what you want your goals to be. You want them to be specific. Part of them being specific is being able to measure them against a specific metric. Um, so in my case, let's say I wanted to open up a new university. Let's go that route. Who would I serve? Who's going to be involved? What is it going to be? What do we want it to be? When it comes to the measurables, what are our goal marks going to be? Our goal markers, as we don't expect, and ultimately you want to celebrate your successes. So when you achieve a goal, don't sell yourself short. Appreciate it, reflect on it, think about what you're going to get out of it. Um, Achievable, the how. How are you going to do it? This is where your process comes in, your scheduling, also looping in other individuals. Jarvis is going to talk about making the most of your resources on campus. So these are ways to help you achieve your goals, especially in this case, academic. They should be relevant. They should apply to you, of course. Does it align with your ultimate career goal or your ultimate goal in life, or educational goal? And then I think the most important one, frankly, for me as a procrastinator, is having it time bound. Set a date, and that date can always be adjusted, especially as you have to reprioritize as new things come in. But ultimately, it sets a sort of drops an anchor, is the way I think of it, so that you can move it, but you really don't want to, because you've been have had this expectation and you want to complete your goals. All right, Jarvis, take it away.
All right. So we're going to have a couple of little tangents here that will kind of set the stage for the remainder of my piece and also to kind of like inspire us a little bit. So here we have a slide with Charles Darwin, sometimes called the father of evolution. He was born the same day as Abe Lincoln. I don't know why that's weird to me, but it's weird to me. And from 1831 to 1836, he was on board a boat called the HMS Beagle, and he surveyed the coast of South America, including the now famous Galapagos Islands. And most of our modern theories on species and evolution stem from this one incredible genius. But next slide, please. Genius may be, but we all have our bad days. And even some of the most famous seminal geniuses of history will have a bad day. So here we have a quote directly from Charles Darwin's diary. I am very poorly today and very stupid and hate everybody and everything. We've all had days like those, am I right? So just keep in mind, we have amazing people that we look up to throughout history, but everyone has had bad days like this. I feel like I've never had a day quite as bad as Charles Darwin on this day. So I think that we could all be really good about how we are in terms of where we can go despite having good days and bad days. Next slide, please. In terms of happiness studies, there are so many kind of like cultural touchstones where we think, oh, the time of your life is when you're young, when it's in high school or college, certainly not grad school. But the reality is, the perception of happiness is very high for when you're young. But we actually, when looking at surveys of individuals throughout generations and throughout their lives, their happiness actually increases over time. It does not decrease. The fun thing is gaining responsibilities, networking, making friends, making real friends, removing bad friends, gaining expertise, gaining skills. All of these things build up our happiness. Next slide. And another thing is when we get older, you know, we care more about the important things. You only can care about so much, especially when you have limited time as an adult. So you're more selective about what you care about. And as you get older, you care about fewer and fewer things, but these are the few things that actually matter in terms of bringing us joy. Next slide, please. So instead of falling into the trappings of what maybe someone else tells you should do to be happy, or what social media tells you, instead of falling into those traps, fall into something else instead. Fall into a good book, fall into a bad book, fall in love, fall out of love, fall into a hole, fall into anything, something of consequence. Because, next slide, eventually, and I promise you, each and every one of you, you will one day, if you haven't already, fall into nachos. Yes, everyone should fall into nachos. And for some of us, vegan nachos. Fall into nachos, but one day we will dives in. We will look into the mirror and wonder, how did I ever become this awesome? And speaking of awesome, not only are we awesome, we are a miracle. Next slide. Sorry. Here's a quote from Nelson Mandela, and it reads, as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others the permission to do the same. And then next quote is from Carl Sagan. We are made of star stuff. Now, that's a really cute thing to say, right? Oh, we're all made of star stuff. How magical. But there is a modicum of reality to this. Next slide. We are actually made of star stuff. Star dust. But how much? Next slide. There are approximately 7 octillion, that's 27 zeros, atoms in the human body. And next slide, during the expansion of the universe, otherwise colloquially known as the Big Bang, you had a huge explosion of hydrogen and helium atoms, which eventually clumped into stars, and other bits clumped into planets in the vast emptiness of space. Next slide. In terms of hydrogen and helium, these are the smallest atoms. They clumped into stars and formed elements. We are, in fact, 4.7 octillion atoms of hydrogen, which means, next slide, we are 30% stardust, and in this case, 30% Ziggy Stardust. Now, we recently just had the Boston Marathon, so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Next slide. It's an incredible accomplishment to have, to run a marathon. I ran my first marathon when I was finishing my dissertation, actually, because I need to get away from it. And what's interesting is human beings are these incredible animals, these incredible machines. Next slide. Because we have been getting good protein, not scavenging, like, not just happening upon, but hunting for protein for somewhere between 500,000 and 200,000 years. However, the advent of man-made weapons did not occur until much later, which means we were somehow getting lots of protein to fuel the biology of our incredibly large brains. Our large brains are actually why childbirth is especially hard for humans in general. Next slide. We are actually incredible machines for running. We have a lung system, a lung capacity that when stretched out, the surface area is a tennis court. We have ligaments and we have Achilles tendons that capture energy and rebound energy. We can sweat, unlike most animals. We were, as scientists now agree, next slide, running down prey until they died of heat exhaustion. And then it was actually relatively easy. Now, I don't know this from experience, but this is what they say. Relatively easy to dispatch a animal that's already on death's door in terms of heat exhaustion. So we used to hunt down our prey with our bare hands, with nothing but our feet and willpower. Next slide. Know your place, Bambi. I'll talk about one more study here. Next slide. There was a study from Shecknell Standing at Bishop's University on positive thinking. The way they did this was you had a control group. People just behaved normally. You had another group that exercised 3 times a week, and then a third group where they put their wrists in a cast and had them think about exercise 3 times a week. If you believe it, you can do it. At the end of the study, next slide, control group, no difference whatsoever. The group that exercised their wrists, physically exercised their wrists, showed a 28% increase in strength. The group that thought about exercising their wrists showed an increase of 24. Basically, by imagining exercise, your body is believing that it is exercise, is preparing for exercise. And this is why I say that you are powerful. Next slide. This is a list of subject matter from, as of 2022, of banned content from books. Next slide. These are the states where most of these bans are occurring. Next slide, please. But the thing is, this is the target audience. The type of material for the intended readers that are young adults. Almost a majority of these books that are being banned are being targeted for you today. So keep in mind that when there are these conversations about removing material, they're not about they're chosen by adults, but they're for young people. Next slide. As you gain experience, as you gain education, as you gain expertise, remember that when you are gaining expertise, you are granting yourself freedom. And once you've achieved that freedom, it is our responsibility to free someone else, to empower someone else. Because, next slide, because we are made of star stuff. One more slide. And because we're made of star stuff, you are all beautiful. And we have a responsibility to make others feel beautiful as well. So, how do we do that? How do we make ourselves feel beautiful? Next slide. A major thing that you can do is student involvement, getting involved with community, with school, with clubs, with people. It comes down to people. And a couple of tips here: be friendly and open. Try to be a positive influence. Reach out, expand your universe, expand your mind. And if all else fails, start something. Next slide. Be friendly and open. Safe spaces begin with us. We can create safe spaces for others. We can have a positive influence. You never know when one nice thing that you do, one good deed can have an incredible impact on someone else's life. Big things can have small beginnings. You can be a hero for someone else. You could be a hero for yourself, and you can create something. Next slide, please. Reach out. Utilize your support systems. You have teachers, professors, guidance counselors, community members. These are individuals that you can, the ones that you trust. If you know they are helpful, stick to them. If someone has demonstrated, especially someone who is in a professional setting or community setting, or just someone that's older, if they've demonstrated that they are supportive of you, they are likely to continue to be supportive of you. But I will say this: you utilize people, and I mean this. Not everyone is going to be your friend, and not everyone is going to be friendly to you, but everyone has utility. There are so many times where I may be advocating on the behalf of a student, and they're trying to find someone to work with, say, in chemistry. And the chemistry professors that they want to work with are very difficult or judgmental or all kinds of prickly things. I always tell them, look, they may be prickly, but you can use them. If they can help you get somewhere, then you can utilize them as a resource. They may be difficult to deal with, but they can be useful. Sometimes you can use people like that. They are tools. Some people are tools. Next, expand your universe. Look beyond your current university or school or groups. Share a passion, learn a new skill, explore a new part of the city, and find opportunities to network. There are many local or community events, conferences, symposiums, meetups, volunteer opportunities that are out there for you. The feeling of contribution alone may spread so much joy for you. Next slide. And ultimately, if you can't find what you're looking for, start something. Start a club, start a group, an event at your school or community. You don't need to have 100 people contributing. Having one or two good friends, new friends, that might just be enough for you to have a new hobby to explore, to expand passions, to share passions, to network and find other helpful folks, find common interests, and be receptive to ideas, because no one is an island. You can only grow if you accept the ideas of others, and then you can take pride into that thing that you've created. Next slide. In terms of things that you want to take pride into, maybe you want to show off the things that you're taking pride into. So we're going to move into cover letters and resume writing. Next slide. Yeah, perfect. Couple things about cover letters. The majority of cover letters that you're going to write, it all comes down to, why am I a good fit for this job, for this program, for this degree, for this position? And it's not just all about you. It's why is this program, this position, this school is a good fit for me? They want to know that they can help you achieve your goals. You want to emphasize experience, skills, and short and long term goals. It's not just, I am so great. It is, I have these skills. These are my goals, and you are reincorporating them. These are my goals, and this is how you, the school, the job, the program, will help me achieve these goals and how I can help you achieve your goals. And you want to focus on having customizations. Not every cover letter is going to be the same from one. Unfortunately, not every cover letter is going to be the same from one to another. People can smell a copy and paste job. When we're doing a round of hiring, I think we got a really qualified looking person on paper, but their cover letter was like, "Hi, dear university, I am looking forward to working with your team in your city." I'm like, did you even try? It doesn't matter who it is because they didn't care enough to make this customized to me as the hiring manager. And you always want to have an inside advocate. Never apply blindly. Reach out, ask questions, talk to people, because then in your cover letter, you can say, oh, in my correspondence with Scott at Suffolk University, that's great. That gives you an in, because then whoever reads that has to walk down the hallway, go to Scott's office and be like, hey, you've been chatting with this kid? It's like, oh, yeah. It's like, okay, cool. Now I got two people vouching for me. And lastly, follow directions. If it says 1,000 words, it does not mean 1,005 words, and hopefully they don't see it. It means 1,000 words. Do not mess around with that. There are a lot of systems in place to basically toss out non-direction following components, and sometimes these are increasingly being done by AI. So don't let a robot tell you if you're qualified for the job or not. Let it get to a person by following all the directions. Next slide. These are all synonymous terms, and I use the parenthetical mostly. Cover letter, personal statement, professional statement, statement of intent. Generally, these are all synonymous unless given very specific details and definitions. The focus is always going to be the fit, your fit, and the program's fit, and a reason to choose you. A lot of the time, people think personal statement, I'm going to get very personal. They do not care about your cat from when you're 5 years old. They care about what you have done and what you can do and what you want to do. Next slide, please. It's the whys. Why me? Why you? And why now? And again, why am I a good fit for this program? And why this program is a good fit for me. Next slide. You want to tell your story. So you have certain things: skills and experience, motivation, community, commitment to diversity, short and long-term goals. A lot of schools now that you're applying to for maybe undergrad or for grad school, they will have a sometimes supplemental, sometimes mandatory document called a diversity statement. It does not mean your diversity. It means your commitment to diversity, the things that you have done to demonstrate that you care about diversity and that you will be a contributing member of the community. Next slide. A couple of short asides here. Change the name of your file name whenever you send it to people. I can't tell you how many times I'll get, sometimes I'll download all of my students' projects in a batch, and they all say, Jarvis, project 3. And I'm like, great, that makes it so easy. So just, even if you need to have it for yourself, project whatever, make it a habit to rename things so it's easier for whoever it is that's looking at them. Next slide. Let your document breathe. Use paragraphs. These will break up the reading, and you'll have topic sentences at the top of every paragraph using headings and subheadings and stuff to break up the data. When you have a paper that's just a big block like this, no one wants to read that. Next slide. Ah, that's so much better. My eyes actually will seek out the gaps, and that's where I know that's a new paragraph. That's a new paragraph. Or if you have a page break to do a new heading, that's a new section of the paper. Next slide. In terms of your writing, have an introduction. Your introduction is a roadmap. Think of the intro to anything you write, be it an email, be it a paper. That is a movie trailer for the rest of the movie. For an email, It's very simple. You're like, I am writing you today because da 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 da. Or the purpose of this paper, the purpose of this research is to do X, Y, and Z. Define items that are not commonly known and spell out abbreviations and initialization. So, um, for example, if you're going to use FBI for the first time, maybe you want to say, Federal Bureau of Intelligence, just for the first time that you're going to use it, because not everyone is aware of acronyms, abbreviations, and initializations. Okay, one more. Topic sentences. These are basically if the introductory paragraph is a roadmap or a movie trailer for the entire paper, your first sentence of every paragraph is the movie trailer for the entire paragraph. So let that topic sentence be a roadmap for the rest of it. The purpose is basically telling me what is going on in this paragraph, just like the first paragraph of a paper is what is going on in this paper. Next slide. All right, so you got your cover letter. How else are you going to show off your skills? Well, you have two ways. And sometimes they'll ask for both a curriculum vitae or a CV and a resume. And a lot of people ask, what's the difference? Well, look at the definition. The definition of curriculum vitae is Latin for course of life, whereas resume means to summarize. The curriculum vitae is a high level document that contains a lot of detail about your achievements, and there is no page limit to a CV. Some folks' CVs can be dozens of pages long. A resume is more concise. It's meant to have an individual stand out based upon not necessarily their achievements, though that's good, but mainly about their skills. Typically, a resume is going to be only 1 to 2 pages. Next slide. So here you have an example of a CV, and you see it's like multiple pages stacked, whereas the resume is short and sweet and is a single page. Next slide. So do I just start typing one out? You don't have to do that. There are templates everywhere that you can borrow, steal, mostly borrow. But there's if you just type in Microsoft Word templates for CV or resume, there are tons of resources, including open office resources. Or if you're using a Mac, Pages. Indeed and LinkedIn and also have many templates as well as resume builder sites. And Canva has a wonderful set. This is a Canva resume right here on the right. And reach out. Ask people to get eyes on your CV or your resume, your teachers, your advisors. Use them to see if there's anything missing in your CV or resume or if something is unclear. Yeah, Canva's fantastic. I really think that Canva really changed the game in terms of presentations. It kind of really lowers the barrier of entry to make things very aesthetic. But that's what I have right now for cover letters and CVs and resumes. I'm gonna send it back over to Scott.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Jarvis. Um, so moving on to personal branding, I want you all to think about what you think of when you think of all of these companies. What comes to mind? For me, when I think of Disney, sort of family friendly. When I think of Apple, I think of innovation and expensive. When I think of Tesla, I think of Elon Musk, which for better or for worse. And when it when it comes to Nike, I think of sports and great athletes. So these are what comes to mind when I see these brands. You want to also convey a feeling, a sentiment when someone sees your resume, your LinkedIn page, an email from you, even your email signature is another place that you can brand. Um, for me, I've always been relatively uncomfortable with branding myself. I think it's a very weird feeling. You feel like you're trying to manipulate people or be something that you're not. But you get to sort of decide what your brand is. So think about it. And in order to do that, these are sort of some thoughts you want to run through when it comes to how you want to convey your brand. And then we'll get into how to actually implement that. When it comes to defining it, who are you? What are you all about? These are your values. This is how you go about it is the last one. And then what you do. So these are three: who, what, how. very similar to the 5 whys that Jarvis shares, or the 5 Ws, excuse me. So here's an example. I'll just use myself. I'm a higher education professional. Hopefully that came through. What do? I connect prospective graduate students, and in this case, sometimes undergrads or high school students, with guidance and support. So that's what I view my job as. How do I do it? I prefer leading with empathy, thinking about what I'm doing as providing a service to someone. And I want that to be a collaborative process that ultimately generates comfort and trust. That is not how everybody operates. Some people, want to convey themselves as very confident, and you want to be afraid of them, or what have you. Maybe if they're a little sharp, as Jarvis was talking about, you have the chemistry professor. They might not have thought about how they wanted to brand themselves, or maybe they did, and they thought, I want to be the curmudgeonly professor, and that's what I'm going to convey. But you get to determine what your brand is, and you want to have that informed by your values, by your experiences as well. And remember, it's in your hands. This is not what you are, or what society might view you as. This is you're sort of manipulating society into viewing you the way that you want to be viewed. So where do you actually do this? A lot of it is digitally at this point, given where we're at, and I have some statistics as well. But LinkedIn is probably the big one. Recruiters use it the most of any recruiting platform, and it's really a place to outline what makes you special. And I'll dig more into that. But also in your resume and cover letters. For me, I think having the same format, the same colors, the same brand for your goal statement, or, resume, and I want to call it a goal statement because I work in higher ed, but it's not, your cover letter. So also, brand that, have the same. It just shows that you're organized, who you are, what you are. And then ultimately in your interviews as well, that's another opportunity to brand. That one's a little bit more murky because you're often either in person or it's live. So that's when preparation comes in quite a bit, so that you can sort of define yourself, remember who you are, so that when a question comes at you saying, why are you interested in this position, this program, you know why, because you know who you are and you know what you're after. And also website and portfolio for those artists out there. Even if you're not an artist, you can certainly have a website or a portfolio of writing, which I guess I consider an art. So yeah, all of these are in the cards. So when it comes to actually just introducing yourself, some people call this an elevator pitch, basically succinctly summing up who you are in like 30 seconds, which is very difficult. Obviously, you say your name, you talk about what you're doing now, either your current degree that you're pursuing or your current role. And then you tie in how your values, skills, passion, and knowledge comes through in that role, and how it matches up ultimately with your goal. And this is usually, to me, a first question in an interview. Tell me about yourself. And then, you're deer in the headlights because no one's ever asked you to tell them about yourself. So practicing this is also very helpful, just so that you're ready. Again, your brain has already sent those pathways in your brain are already lit up, so that it's not so new and scary and feels so uncomfortable. So here's an example, again, just using myself, where I am today. I talk about my degree and my current profession, what I value, and then tie in also my passion and skills. So in this case, I talk about data. I have some data skills. I really enjoy working with it and organizing it, making it into a story, building relationships. These are things that I enjoy doing. And not everybody, something in undergrad that really caught me up was because I studied psychology, I was in most of my classes with other psychology students. So I didn't recognize the value of my thought process because a lot of people in the classroom had a similar approach. But as I went on and got my MBA, I'm meeting with people from finance, undergrad, accounting, engineers. And as they say things, I'm like, oh, you have no idea about X, Y, or Z that I might know quite a bit about. So you really don't sell yourself short. Your knowledge is not everybody has it, and those come from your experiences too, not just academic training. Then ultimately, your goal. You want to really tie in everything and make it should all be aligned together. So in this case, I said, oh, I'm going to jump ship to the private sector and want to leverage my campus recruiting skills there. So connecting the dots from my experiences and my skills to my ultimate goal. Other things just to think about when you're thinking about your brand: who's your target audience? Is this is it an interview? Is it a program? Who's reading this document, or who would be seeing this? Yeah, think about problems that you enjoy solving. I hate puzzles, but I really enjoy um, geography, and I play a funny little game. It's like Wordle, but it's for geography. And I realized I really enjoy it and I'm good at it. Whereas if you put, letters in front of me, no, thank you, or numbers for that matter. Um, what excites you? Stay passionate, exude, um, exude enthusiasm. Ultimately, people don't want to work with or teach Debbie Downers, for lack of a better term. It's perfectly okay to have moments where you're frustrated and you're mad and you're down. Um, but in these moments, really try to put on your best face, your best fake face, whatever it is, your best mask, and ultimately play the game. Much like Jarvis said, your people can ultimately be tools to help you, and that's not callous in any way. In my case, I like being a tool. Like, use me, please. I want to help you reach your goals. And I think a lot of people have that outlook, and when they don't, you're still able to get knowledge and what you need out of them. So I talked about LinkedIn. This is the base of your digital brand. Some statistics. So when it comes to your photo, so these are basically, what do we got? 6 areas of focus. Your photo, use one that looks like you. Don't use an old one. Don't use an AI manipulation or anything like that. Probably not use any filters as well, I believe, unless use a filter within reason. You don't want, the sparkles or the little ears or anything like that on there. And your face should take up 60% of the frame. It shouldn't be like, because it's such a small window, be the only person. You don't want the recruiter or the faculty member or the admissions officer seeing a LinkedIn and there's like 5 people in the picture and she's like, I have no idea who you are. Smile. Statistics on this. So people found, or one study of 800 profile pictures found that people view you as more likable, competent, and influential if you smile in your pic. Smiles that show teeth were rated twice as likable as closed mouth smiles. Um, there are certain, again, my goal is to like be a warm presence. So in my picture, I'm smiling. Some people have a picture with a very stern face and it's black and white and it's a little bit intimidating. And I think, ooh, I'm a little bit afraid to engage with this, even though I may respect them a little bit more in my weird, twisted brain that has been conditioned by society to maybe appreciate that. Ultimately, people really do like a smiling face. And then when it comes to your dress code, it really is somewhat industry dependent. You don't want to be overdressed, but you don't want to be underdressed, certainly, but you also don't want to be overdressed. You don't necessarily need to be in a 3-piece suit for most jobs, frankly. Especially now, I think workplaces in general are starting to get a little bit more casual and not require that type of stuff. And then have somebody else take your photo. Use a friend. There's usually clinics at career centers or different events. I was at a vegan event in Salem, and they had a headshot photo booth. So all over, take advantage of those. Your headline, always customize it, because it basically impacts the algorithm for when people are searching for you or when they're looking for candidates for a job. It automatically autofills with your current role wherever it is. So if you're a student, it'll say student at X, Y, and Z university or high school. And then generally, you want to tailor it to your audience, include your value proposition. Basically, this is that businessy term. What do you bring to the table? What unique skills do you have? And then use your audience's language as well, and ultimately be accurate and honest. This is not a place to overpump yourself, but it's also not a place to be modest, frankly. So looking at mine, I'm smiling, there's teeth there. I drive enrollment and empower future leaders through strategic admissions planning and execution. Lots of buzzwords, but also these impact the algorithm. So if I was looking for a job, strategic admissions planning is probably a skill that they're looking for if I was looking, to go to a similar position. So you want to tailor that not necessarily to what you are right now, but also what you want to be or where you want to go. Aspiring X, Y, or Z is a good way to position that. Your summary, there are so many guides and templates for this as well. I found this to be very hard, writing a summary. So really you want to spotlight your experience, specifically what makes you different, why are you passionate about what you do, and be authentic and write in the first person. I think not being too formal is important here, but also not too informal. So strike that balance, and again, use a template that can help you. Also, I'll mention, I know a lot of people are using ChatGPT now. Treat that as a tool. It is a phenomenal tool to use. It does not give answers. It provides resources on, it's great to compile resources, but it's not going to give you answers. And if it does, well, when it does give you answers, it can be confidently wrong. So just be careful, treat it as a tool, ask it to rephrase something if you don't like the way that it's worded, things like that. Don't be afraid to weave in some humor as well. I did not. Mine's pretty straightforward. Talks about what I value, a little bit about my background, where I came from, how that impacted me, and what I do now. And then ultimately a call to action. If you want to connect, please reach out. If you provide a service of some sort, this is where you plug that in. When it comes to your experience, I scroll down, this impacts your profile ranking. So when recruiters, anyone else who's searching for prospects, they're looking for keywords that are often in your experiences or your skills. So you want to use active words. We're thinking about drove, collaborated, initiated, aligned, negotiated, things like that. And there we go, action verbs. If you do internships, part-time work, any type of specific educational program or volunteer, don't put it in the volunteer section. Put that in your experience section. For some reason, they break it out. You're going to want to put it into your experiences because it's a valuable experience. And then make sure also that you use your skills section and outline what your skills are and how they applied to each of your jobs or each of your experiences. LinkedIn caps it at 50. So each role, probably 5 or so that really you think both indicate what you did, but also are going to be keywords or key skills that the recruiters are looking for the job that you want. Um, so exactly right here, what you want in the future. And then recommendations are great on LinkedIn. So you can request them from first degree connections, basically people that you've connected with directly. Sneaky important, both to the algorithm and ultimately just the recruitment process in general. Having a face that is real and has a position and also has experiences vouching for you really builds your credibility and your trustworthiness. Use your colleagues, managers, clients, professors, advisors, anyone who knows you and can speak to something and anything that you did with them and can speak to your professionalism. Also, it never hurts to give to get. These are all reciprocal things. If you write a good recommendation for somebody, they're going to be much more inclined to write one for you. So anytime you have a good experience, let the person know and let the world know ultimately. All right. Wow, look at that. With 3 minutes left, we really pushed it. So this is me and Jarvis's email. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, Suffolk related or not. Again, this is what we enjoy doing, is helping students make valuable connections and guide them through processes. So I will stop sharing. And Jarvis, any final words from you?
That was fantastic. Lots of good content. Thanks for having us, everybody.
Yeah, I actually have a couple questions from a couple people. So
Awesome.
the first one is it seems like people receiving cover letters and resumes have to review a lot of stuff. Is brief always better?
I would say that first and foremost, always follow the directions. So, like, if it does say 1,000 words and you're under 1,000 words, if it's like 500 to 1,000 words and you're under 500 words, that's too brief. So, personally, I'm more of a minimalist in terms of my writing, and everyone should always write to their own styles. But I would say that as long as the content is there, that is the most important thing. Don't feel like, oh, because I'm brief, that means it's better. As long as the content is where it needs to be, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I would add, I read quite a few resumes and goal statements. I do value some succinctity, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with the length. It's really more about what's being said. So what Jarvis is saying, like if everything is there and it's a page, great. If everything is there and it's 2 pages, but it still answers the questions and you're not taking me down this really windy path and making it more robust than it needs to be, then that's fine as well. But just stick to the points, I think, and make sure to do an outline, make sure you hit all the points that you want to hit as well.
One thing to do is to check over to see if there's any repetition or unnecessary words. So things like very, really, um, therefore, that kind of stuff, or I believe. There are a lot of things that you can make it to be more brief, but it's not brief for brevity's sake. It's brief to be more focused.
Yeah.
Cool. The next question is a little related, but it says, when writing papers, I feel pressure to make it eloquent. When I really just want to get to the point. How important is it for my papers to sound pretty?
Yeah, so I would say it depends on your audience and what the assignment is. So if you're writing a goal statement or something like that, you'll probably want to keep it less flowery, is the word I usually use. And I say this as someone who wrote very flowery and liked writing long passages with robust words. And then I went to my MBA program and they were like, no, just tell us what you're doing and what you want and be very organized about it. So think about your audience and what they would like to see. and try to strike that balance between the two.
Yeah, I would agree. When I was an undergrad, I would use every single comma, semicolon, double dash that you can do to just kind of make everything very labyrinth and serpentine. But when you get into academic writing, generally a lot of the time less is more. You just want to get to the point. There are going to be opportunities to have flourishes, but you need to have the important bits first. So if you feel pressured to have very flowery or extravagant writing, don't be. Write the way that you write and just work on writing well the way that you write. And someone is going to appreciate that you get to the point because, like Scott, going through hundreds, maybe even 1,000 cover letters a year, you appreciate that for sure.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. This was really great. I love so many pieces of this. All right, thank you everybody for joining us. And thanks, Scott and Jarvis.